last week, they were completely rammed. They were filled up to the gunnels, they were queuing down the street. They said, you should have been here last week. I swear, you should have been here last week. Oh yeah, you should have been here last week.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of You Should Have Been Here Last Week, the comedy podcast presented by myself, Steve Gribbin, and fellow comedian Paul Ricketts.
Aloha.
Each edition, we flash our backstage passes to push open the diseased, cracking wooden door to poke around in the elusive recesses of comedy. We take a look at the grafters, the crafters, the show-offs, the shafters, the bright-eyed, the pie-eyed, the steely-eyed, the cannot be denied, the goofers, the roofers, the bulletproofers, the chancers, the romancers, the charmers, the disarmers. In fact, anyone that goes to make up this business that we call comedy. And today's very special guest is international stand-up comedian, writer and performer, described by none other than The Spectator magazine as one of the most subversive acts ever. It is the wonderful Christian Schulte-Loh. Welcome.
Thank you very much, guys. What a lovely introduction. Wow.
I mean, normally we start by asking, how did you get started? But I want to ask, what is the German comedy scene like? How would you describe it?
Well, it's obviously the joke would be that I am the German comedy scene. But, but we've made big progress over the years. As you might know, they did send Henning and myself over to the UK to learn from the best, which is you guys. There's a very funny English comedian called Don Clark, who's popular in Germany. He's from Halifax. Very, very funny. But he only ever gigs in German. He doesn't do anything in English. He's fantastic, and he's just turned 70, so he's like
wow. Okay, yeah.
There is hope
very
yet.
fresh. What's that?
There's hope for us yet. I'm going to Germany in 20 years' time.
Well, some people go and work on cruise ships. Others go to Germany. So there's always hope.
Was there a tradition of stand-up comedy in Germany? Or was it more? People tell me it was more slapstick based.
Yeah, obviously that has changed a lot. But when I was a kid, so when I was a teenager, stand-up became a thing in Germany. I would say like in the early mid-90s. Mm-hmm. A guy called, which is funny because his name sounds like Michael McIntyre, but his name is Michael Mittermeier in Germany. And he was the first one to make it big, just doing stand-up and nothing else, And it's funny because he also occasionally does in English. And he once told me the story that he was in the UK and he got introduced by the MC as a special guest, ladies and gentlemen, a very special guest. Please welcome to the stage. And then kind of the MC made the mistake of saying Michael McIntyre. People went nuts. And then it took him 5 minutes to recover from that. But I think the set ended.
Oh my God. That's brilliant.
He was one of the first guys to really do like proper stand-up in the early 90s. I want to say like 92, 93. And I went to see him when I was still in school. And it was great because he kind of like broke the habit, like you said, the slapstick and wig wearing and double act kind of like old school comedy. And all he did was just like talk, about his life, just regular stand-up. And it kind of like paved the way for many others. And now it's frowned upon, if you do, at least amongst younger comics, if you do the old school stuff, it's frowned upon because people want to do like pure stand-up. And then they call it New York or London style stand-up, as if that was the thing, As if that was the thing.
Yeah, I mean, there must be, as you've probably said, that there's a Halifax style stand-up as well.
Right.
It's interesting that they should specifically have those forms of stand-up. What's the difference then between New York and London stand-up? What's the difference?
I think in the UK you need jokes,
Yeah.
But really, I mean, Steve and Paul, because we've, like, the first time we gigged together is a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
And I remember that kind of like that era when we were open spots, and we were just like traveling around the country and doing, I don't know, unpaid gigs after a 5-hour drive, And I remember that in that era, it impacted me so much seeing people just having like a super polished set and not getting any money for it, and you would go with like a highly polished 10-minute set and you'd be the funniest person in that town, and you still wouldn't get paid. And I feel like that is UK style stand-up, is just jokes, jokes, jokes. And that's not even a guarantee for you to make any money, and how much of a privilege is that?
Yeah. There used to be a South African promoter that I did a few gigs from, and he had a T-shirt printed on it, and on it said "No funny, no money."
Right.
And I prized that to him. And then one day it was I did a gig in I won't name the town, but somebody stole it, so somebody's got that T-shirt now. Yeah, prescient.
Because I don't know how comedy literate is the audience of this podcast. Will they understand the terms open spot and all that?
Yeah, we've hopefully taught them.
Okay, great.
All 200 of them exactly what it means. And there's a lot of comedians that listen to this, so they'll get it.
Yeah.
So I remember once I did like a 20-minute spot, so a paid spot. 20 minutes are always paid and 10 minutes are unpaid. That's usually the rule, as we know. And there was this 10-minute spot, an open spot. So it was somewhere in the middle of nowhere, really. And he was very funny, a young guy from Australia, doing the UK, and very, very funny, one-liner comic. And every joke was original and landed and was great and very, just very funny. And he smashed it for 10 minutes, And then I talked to him afterwards. I said, how come you're not doing 20s? That was an amazing set, so funny, every single joke. And he said, and he was a bit autistic, he was a bit on the spectrum. And he said, well, I only have 18 minutes of top-notch material, I'm not ready.
That is brilliant. Brilliant.
And he said, I come back when I have 20,
Oh my God! You just tell them a few, tell jokes slower. That's all he needs to do to get to 20.
I mean, can I just ask as well, what are the audiences like in Germany, the comedy audiences?
So I would say, because I just said the word comedy literate, I think that is the biggest difference in my experience, between the British scene and the German scene, is that most audiences in the UK will have seen stand-up before, So they're in front of you and they will have seen stand-up. They have seen, ideally, a lot of stand-up. And in Germany, you still get some audiences that haven't seen much stand-up, at least not live, that might have seen it on the telly. And obviously the younger generation, they have seen a lot, but the older generation, some of them have never really seen a proper stand-up show. And so you're dealing with an audience that might still laugh about a really hack joke. And then but you don't want to do the hack joke because you're like, I'm a comedian. I know better than doing the hack joke. Yeah, so I think that's the biggest difference, and that's what I appreciate most about gigging in the UK, is that you do know people. They're almost like policing. The audience are policing the acts, which I think is great. So you don't get away with a cheap, old and hacky joke, because the audience will not let you get away with it. And I like that,
So why did you pick England? Because you could have picked anywhere. I mean, you could have even gone to New York and done New York style comedy. Why England?
It was out of a kind of like a coward position of being a coward, I think, because when I was as a teenager, I wrote stand-up bits. When I went to see it live, it was a new thing, and I loved it, and I was like, I want to do it. I've always known, and now I feel like there's a thing, going on, so I could actually be a part of it. And then I wrote bits that I still have on my computer when I was like 16, maybe 15, 16 years old, and obviously they're shit. Now reading them now, they're shit, but. When I read them, I see the idea I had, and then I was not brave enough to do it because I was like, what if people see it? You don't want to have a witness when you do your first gig. No witnesses. And then I did a semester abroad. So I studied in Germany, and for one semester, I went to Belgium, and everything there was in English. So the whole university thing was in English, or the everything. And then I went to a gig in Dutch in Belgium, and I watched the gig, didn't understand most of it, but then I asked the promoter afterwards, is it okay for me to perform here in English? And he said, are you an experienced actor? And I said, of course I am, And I wasn't. You need to get your foot into the door somehow,
Yeah.
And then he gave me like a 7-minute spot, or like 2 weeks later or whatever, and I wrote the stuff. And that's how I started in English, by sheer coincidence and by being a coward for not doing it in Germany. And I felt like abroad, you can, like English tourists, when they go to Spain. So no rules apply when you're abroad. We all know that. So I could just get away with it here. And then I met some English comics there. I met Nick Ravel. You remember Nick Ravel?
Oh, yeah. We've had
been on the show.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah. I love Nick. And I met him there. This is like in the early 2000s. And I met him, and then we started talking. I met other English comics, and I was like, I need to go to London at one point, And that's what happened. So it was kind of, I never doubted that London would be the final destination for me. Until I went to Liverpool and Manchester, I thought maybe that would have been an option too,
It's always interesting to us to talk to anybody that does it in is not in their native language. It's an incredible feat. How does that work? I'm just interested in the sort of, do you feel more comfortable doing it in German, or are you?
You know what? It's so strange because people ask that a lot, and then I remember. Well, you're a great interviewer, Steve. I don't want to take away anything from you. You don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear that. Thanks for that question. I've been asked this question a million times.
Yeah.
No, but I feel like because I only knew stand-up in English for the first 10 years or so. I started in English, and then I did it in English only for like 10 years or so. And then it was a strange shift towards my native language. When I was asked to do gigs in German, I was like, but hang on. How do I do it? What's the stuff I would talk about? What's the material? What's my persona and all that? Because I was in England, it was easy. I was the German guy observing British culture, being a guest, being an insider from the outside. And then in Germany, who am I? What am I going to talk about? And what's my style and all that? And what if I make a slight mistake? Because in English it's charming, right? If you're a foreigner, you make a mistake. Charming. And in your own language, it's a bit strange, if you can't speak properly and all that. And then it did work out okay, the first gig, I remember. And I kind of translated some things, and I came up with other stuff. But I felt it was much easier for me in English in the beginning, because I didn't think about it. I just did it. I felt like, wow, this is great. I can do what I want. I'm a guest here. I can just be fun, and I can be the odd one out, because you're on stage. Everybody's English, or most people are English, some from Canada. But then you're the exotic guy, and that's always a great position to be in, I think.
Yeah.
So do you think in English when you're performing in English?
Yeah.
So then when you're performing in German, are you still thinking in English?
In the beginam, yes, but not anymore. So now I work more in Germany than I do in the UK, and it's kind of like shifted over the pandemic a bit. But I in the beginning, I was like, I look at my old notebooks, I have like we all do it. Every comic has like boxes full of notebooks and notepads, and I went through some of the old notes, and I was like, oh man, this is all in English. Even the periods that I spent in Germany, started gigging over here. I felt like I still wrote all my ideas and thoughts were in English, and then that kind of gradually shifted more towards a mix of both, I would say. Some jokes only work in one language, I think.
I'm pretty certain that's got to be true, even though I've never performed in another language. Spanish as well. Is that the same process, or have you gone to now you think in Spanish when you're performing in Spanish?
So I lived in Argentina for 3 years, and then I'm not doing the cheap joke of having relatives.
I was just thinking of doing it myself.
Well,
Uncle Martin lives there.
Yeah, no, they were communists. They had to leave. So
yeah,
no, but I lived there for 3 years, and I was like, I want to do stand up here as well and try it out, and it was exciting because not many people did it, and it was kind of new, and it was good fun, but that was way harder for me, way harder. I felt like in English I was fluent, so I could just speak, whatever came to mind, and in Spanish I had to prepare my sets, because my Spanish wasn't at the same level yet. And I felt like that I think doesn't work for stand-up. If you need to write everything and rehearse it and then bring it out, I think for me it's not natural enough. I feel like stand-up needs to be conversational and witty and in the moment, and ideally no filter, But if you have to write everything and then rehearse it, there's too much going on, I think. Yeah, you need to be comfortable, in the language you perform in, I think.
I mean, there's some people who even speak in the language think that that's the only way to do stand-up, is to actually learn it in front of a mirror.
But don't you agree that if you there are, even if you just UK, there in a way there are different languages that you perform in, aren't there? So one room is a working class room on a Friday night, and that's a different language, a different way of communicating between the comedian and the crowd. And then another room is maybe like a bit highbrow, corporate, on a Tuesday night in a beautiful function room with chandeliers. So it's a different language you're using. It's a different kind of like approach. So I feel like even if it's just one so-called language, you're still using different ways of communicating. So you always have to adapt, I think.
Yeah, I think it's totally right. I mean, in fact, I think that's what people pay you for. They pay you to read the room.
Right.
To make that judgment so that you can tailor it to the audience.
It's always the first step, isn't it? Reading the room. It's like if you don't do that, and we've all seen people, maybe we've done it ourselves, where we haven't read the room properly, and it's just it's minor details, and then it just doesn't.
Yeah, especially if you come out that's somewhere else and make the mistake. As a well-known comedian said, in Southampton, he said, "Hello, Bournemouth," and of course they hate each other. He didn't recover from that because they just boo. But talking about different language, I think the rhythm of comedy is maybe the same everywhere. I was once studying in India, in Mumbai, and there's a guy on there who was the rising star of Indian comedy, and he did his whole set moved between Gujarati, Punjabi, and English. Right. And it was fascinating to see because the audience was familiar with all three. Yeah. And even though he'd often do the punchline in Punjabi, because that was the main. But even then, as we watch it from the side of the stage, all the sort of British acts, you could tell when the punchline was. Do you know what I mean? And it went boom. But he said, "Oh yeah, here it comes." Yeah, here it comes. But that's fascinating, really.
Absolutely, it's like music. It's like you listen to it from the back. And you don't know the language. You always know when the joke's going to come, if there's a tagline or not. The rhythm is just, it's like music. But I feel like if it's well done, it's jazz rather than classical music.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not always the same pattern,
I mean, can I just ask, do German audiences, are they well behaved and do they heckle?
They don't heckle as much. I encourage them to heckle. So and when I do my solo show, my opening is always about the comparison between my experience in Britain and in Germany. So I encourage them to behave in a British way, to heckle and to participate, rather than just watch, because German audiences often, if you don't tell them, they're often a bit more passive, I would say. They love it, they laugh and they applaud, but they're a bit more passive. They don't feel like they want to interrupt the show. Like in the UK, everybody in the audience wants to show you, I'm a funny guy too, listen to me, I'm a funny guy too. Which I love, but like in Germany, people often don't do that. And then they would wait until the show is over and then come with a list of notes on a clipboard,
So, like you didn't do this right. Yeah, oh my God.
But one big difference is Germans applaud. They tend to applaud a bit more than British audiences. I feel like I don't like applause that much because I feel like the rhythm, we talked about rhythm. I feel like laughter doesn't really, take away from your rhythm, but applause often kind of like interrupts the whole flow. And I feel like too much applause, I'm not a fan of.
Too much applause. I just
No, but you know what I mean? How you sometimes have an audience where they're not laughing loudly, but they're applauding. They're like, no, you should laugh. You shouldn't applaud.
Well, obviously, I mean, laughter better than applause. I mean, you're not going to get no laugh from just the applause. But applause break is lovely. I love.
Yeah, it's of course, yeah. But sometimes you see if you see a dead face and the person's not laughing but clapping, you're like, no. Like you as an audience member didn't read the room right, Yeah.
It's even worse when they agree. Sometimes you could say a joke and they go, yeah. Yeah. That's true, that is. Oh, yeah.
I love it when they repeat the punchline, when they find it so funny that once the laughter has kind of like subsided, you hear somebody whisper the punchline again.
Yeah, I mean, I had a gig very much like that last Saturday where it was tough as really tough gig, and at the end they went Ray, but I actually said, where the fuck were you during the set? Because
Right.
a lot of them just sat like this, and then at the end, yeah, we like that. But it's like the old cliche: are you enjoying it? Or
Tell your
please
face.
tell your face. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like an audience of 40 or 50 people, like grim, and then
Right. But I think we've all been in audiences as well as a part of the audience when you feel like there's no, it doesn't ignite, there's no kind of like, there's no spark, it's not happening. And I'm enjoying it, but why is everybody so dead? And then if everybody thinks that, it becomes a dead audience. And afterwards they're all like, this was great, but it didn't happen. It just didn't happen. It didn't erupt,
Yeah.
Because I think
Interesting,
the audience needs loud people. They need a few loud people, like a spark that ignites the flame. And if that's missing, you can have a great gig, but the energy in the audience never really kind of like becomes what it could be,
Yeah, but that's why smaller audiences are harder to play, because they're more self-conscious about the fact that there's not many of them, and also they can see each other and they're gauging. I mean, we've often talked about this on the podcast, me and Paul, about the way that the audience reaction is almost like an animal, isn't it? You can't. Right. It's like unpredictable, but they've also made up their minds about you within about 30 seconds of you coming on stage. Like collectively, just go, okay, we can trust this guy, or.
But would you agree that I feel like when I analyze what we do, right, I feel like I came up with this order of things that the audience does to us and with us and about us, and I feel like, because people always think you have to be funny. Yes, you have to be funny. But I think that's not the first thing you have to, because you can't be funny first, because you have to get to the microphone, and before you get the first punchline out, things will have happened already. So I feel like I feel like it happens in this order. I want to see if you guys agree with it. The first thing is they have to trust you, they have to feel like we're in safe hands. This person knows what they're doing, So I think that's the first step. Then the second step is they have to like you. So they have to feel like, I find this guy or this woman, likable and interesting. And then the third thing is, you have to make them laugh. They have to find you funny. But I think it's in that order. So funny comes third.
Yeah. I mean, that's why it often happens when somebody comes on stage and there's something goes wrong with the microphone or technically, or they can't get it. Immediately the audience are going, oh, this person doesn't know what they're doing, even though it's not their fault. That, if you sort of go, then it's a much harder, it's an uphill battle.
You can't engage. That's the problem. You can't engage them. If you've got mic problems, and it has happened to me, that's probably happened to all of us, and you pick up the mic and it instantly starts cutting out, especially on your punchlines. Right. And then you're looking for technical help, and everything's gone. Your energy's gone, the connection's gone, and it's hard to come back from.
Yeah. I mean, point number 2 is an interesting one, Christian, because I always think, absolutely, they've got to trust you and think that you know what you're doing. But the likability thing is something in a way that you as a performer have got no real control over.
Yes.
You can make yourself likable.
Right.
It's like that. It's like looking at a photograph of yourself thinking, oh, do I look like that? But in a sense, and it might just be on that particular night, they just go, no.
Yeah.
No. And there's that, I don't know what the answer to that is.
But look, I feel like some days, and I'm very tall. I'm 6'7", right? So I'm very, very visible normally. But when I walk through the streets or into a shop or whatever, just in like everyday life, on some days I feel extremely visible, and other days I feel completely invisible. Do you agree with that? That some days you feel like, man, nobody sees me.
Most days.
Yeah. And then other days, you're like, oh my God, I walk into the room and everybody's paying attention. So it's so strange. It feels like it might be a hormonal thing, or a way you carry yourself, or the way you dress, or I don't know what it is. But on some days in everyday life, it's not even on a stage, it feels like that. But then imagine on a stage where they're all looking at you instantly and you feel invisible, what a nightmare. What a nightmare.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing, because I did a gig once just after I had COVID. And so I got this gig. I cancelled a load of gigs because I got COVID. And then someone offered me a gig 4 days afterwards. And I made the mistake of doing it. Got to the gig and told the showrunner, I've made a mistake. I don't think I could get through this. I'm just getting overcome. And she goes, well, there's no one else here to replace you. So, and so I had lots of whiskey, thinking that would help. And then I went on stage. And it's just weird that there was something that was missing in some sort of internal energy that no matter how much I pretended or acted to have it, it wasn't there.
Right.
And the audience could sense it. I was emceeing, so by the time I went on the second time, they're going, he's lacking something. Did
they express it like that, or did anyone say anything? Not
as nicely as that.
They were holding up.
You're lacking something.
That would be a great heckle. 2 minutes into the set. You know what? We think you're doing all right, but you're lacking something.
Yeah, especially if there was like chin stroke about it, and someone, yes, I think you're lacking something.
Yes, I can't put my finger on it. Yes. But I want to go back to that thing about because a lot of Canadian acts say the same thing that you've said, that when they come over here, they can start going, they can comment on British life and go, hey, what is it with your traffic lights, man? But when they go back to Canada, they have that problem of, not being the outsider. So what I wanted to ask is, do you feel that your status as the outsider in British, the British comedy scene allows you to get away with saying more stuff than British comedians do? Because I think it does, but
I think so too. Yeah, but I also think a lot of people read it wrong because they think that I'm an outsider talking about.
Right.
Not really an outsider, because you can only do it. That's my experience. I can only do it if I am part of the group. You can't say I've just arrived. Look at you guys. Then everybody's like, who the fuck are you? Yeah. But if you say I've been in this country for many years, and aren't we Londoners crazy? Look at us. But it only works like that. You have to be a Londoner to joke about London. You can't. I mean, unless you're from the north and you play that card or whatever. But you can't. I think you can't visit a country and make fun of it. But you can be a part of it and say, I wasn't born here, but I've been here for a while. And oh my God, isn't this crazy? And maybe in a way that people were like, I never thought about it, but you're right, It helps to kind of like maybe have a different perspective on things. Yeah. But you're not really an outsider. Otherwise, people would just hate you, I think, for what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, I did see you quite recently at Headliners in Chiswick, and you were very, you dealt with the heckler very well, but you're quite rude to them. But they accepted it.
I try to always be nice and charming, but only rude to people because how you make big people small and small people big. I think that's when you have an NHS nurse in the front row. I think they could get away with anything because you don't want to make fun of them. Yeah. Or somebody who cares for or whatever. But if you have like a banker or an estate agent and somebody who is just playing the big card, I think you could people want to see how you make them smaller, and kind of
the guy you picked on was a hedge fund manager.
I know.
You said, congratulations, you fucked everything up like this. I think you shook him by the hand and everyone's like, woo! Yeah. Even though it being Chiswick, there's probably full of hedge fund managers.
Right. Right. But I think it works because of that, It did work because of that, because people are like, he can take it. He's probably making 7 figures, so you can. But no, but I would never do that to like an Eastern European bar person or whatever, No. Like you have to make them bigger, I think, than they are. But also it does go wrong, but it's only funny, right? I think we see this every night. It's only funny if it could potentially also go wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that the audience want to feel that it's on a knife edge.
Well, yes, they love that. That's one of the main appeals of comedy, is that it could be crap, and that's why every audience think they're the toughest audience you've ever performed to.
Yeah.
Isn't that the worst when people say, didn't we make it hard for you? Or when people say, to me, my personal hell is people every night. People coming to me and say, I normally don't like comedy, but I thought.
And you're saying to yourself, why the fuck are you here?
I know.
Who brought you? Because obviously you didn't want to come.
Do you reckon restaurant owners and chefs get that as well? People say, I don't normally eat food. I really like your restaurant.
Well, yeah, they do. I mean, I don't normally like tomatoes, but that was delicious.
Yeah,
It's that sort of
just
thing.
But I mean, some of the best moments, we were talking about things that are going wrong, some of the best moments, in all our comedy careers. I was once on with a very, I won't say who he was, but he was playing Camden Jongleurs, and some guy had been an absolute pain in the fucking arse all night and been going, "You're shit, you're fucking shit, you are." And then he was emceeing, he made that classic mistake of saying, "Oh, well, if you think you're any good, why don't you come up and have a go?" You know? And then the audience are going, "Oh God." And the guy goes, No, I don't want to do it. And then the MC thinks, "Oh, I've sent blood now." He goes, Come on. Yeah, come on, you coward." And then he just like that, pulled his arm, and his arm came off.
What?
It's one of the funniest things I've ever. And the whole audience just went, "Oh." Oh, it was fantastic.
Did they laugh? I would have laughed.
Oh, the audience were laughing and laughing and laughing, and he was like playing with the arm. Hello, everybody.
Wow.
But you know that bit, that absolute split second before they laughed and before it was just, oh my God, it's fantastic. Right. But I mean, obviously not that extreme. But when things do go wrong, it is funny sometimes, isn't it?
Oh yeah. It's like, but I admire comics for intentionally sabotaging their own set, and I've done it before. I think we've all done it. But like the best I've ever seen was at the Manchester Comedy Store, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. And it was, should I name him? I would just say it was a very, very good Canadian comic. And this was now a Saturday night, and for some reason, I think it was Mother's Day or something. It was just mainly women in the audience, but it was very, very female audience, and it was also mainly women on the bill, and then the Canadian guy and me. Now everybody was having a blast. It was a phenomenal night, fantastic. But of course, the women were talking a lot about female life and being a woman, being a mother, and all that, and the audience went for it completely. They loved it. Finally, one of us telling us what it's like and everything. And it was a great gig, And then the Canadian comic, a very, very good comic, like I said, I really respect him a lot. And he said, this is watching it on the screen, in the dressing room, in the green room, and saying, this is too easy, This is not good. It's just like everybody's agreeing on everything, and I don't like it, And he just didn't like the fact that the gig was too easy. So he walks on and opens. He was closing the show, He walks on and opens his set at an amazing night with a terrible abortion joke, a horrendous joke about abortion, and loses, of course, the entire room, within 2 seconds. They hated him, they booed him, but he's so good that he worked his way back to having a good set, and he ended it. It was just like the loudest applause of the night, It was a crazy. They loved him. End of it. And then he came back, and I talked to him about it. He said, I didn't like it. It was too easy. I wanted to sabotage the gig and see if I could rebuild it. And that's pretty much a pair of insanity and genius. Within a minute, unbelievable. But it was amazing to watch, amazing. So it's 8 minutes or 10 minutes of absolute silence and hatred, And then the next 10 minutes was constantly getting louder and louder to the point where it was just erupting, Unbelievable.
Because one of the things I did notice about you is that you do a lot of MCing, which I think has improved you as an act. Because one of the things that people are always impressed about you, okay, do it in a foreign language, but you can also riff.
Yeah, thanks. I did that intentionally. I feel like many years ago. This is like ages ago. I spoke to all the promoters that booked me at the time, and it wasn't that many. It was in the early years, and I spoke to all the UK promoters that booked me. I said, "Can you only book me as an MC for the next 12 months or whatever?" And they were like, "Yeah, actually good, because we're looking for MCs. We don't have that many compares." And so all I did for, I wouldn't say like a year or so, was mainly compare gigs, and because I wanted to improve that, like the kind of like the riffing and the ad-libbing and the crowd work, and it really worked. I feel like it did help a lot, but also I didn't write a lot of material in that time because I was mainly focusing on that. But if in terms of like skills, I think it was a good school to go through. So if comedians who are just starting out are listening to this, I would highly recommend that. Even if you feel like you're not the crowd work person as a beginner and you always want to polish your set, I feel like it's a really good way of becoming more comfortable in your own skin on stage. Just going out there and emceeing a lot of gigs, I think it really helped me. I mean, everyone's different, but would you agree that it does help with your act?
Oh God, yeah, I think totally does. And I remember seeing the difference once you did that year. It was you were a different act afterwards.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, but you do a lot of emceeing, right, Paul? I've seen you MC many times.
Yes, I know, but I don't think it's had that effect on me.
No, but you're great. You're a great MC. I remember this gig that we did at the drama club in, help me, what was it?
Bracknell?
Bracknell Drama Club, yes, under the car park. And I remember getting to the gig, and it had already started, and you were emceeing, and I expected the gig to be a bit slow and a bit, on a Tuesday night or whatever it was. And you were smashing it. You were standing on stage with a pint in your hand and absolutely smashing it. They loved you. And then there was another act on, and then we had an interval and whatever. And we spoke, and you were like, Christian, I'm just having so much fun. Is it okay if I do a bit longer, And I said, yeah, of course. We'll have a drink afterwards anyway. And I was watching you, and you were smashing it. It was so good. And then we had I went on much later, and I missed one train, the next train, because we got drunk after the gig, and we stayed there, and we had a blast, But I remember watching you. I watched almost your entire performance as an MC. And it was just amazing because I think you were the star of the night. They loved you, and we were just filling the gaps between your sets. And you were just so relaxed because you were holding a pint. I remember this. I have the image in my head. So you were standing there with the pint, holding it like from the top, like normally only a very kind of like intense person would do. But when you get to a pub and you see a person hold a pint from the top, like I better stay away from that guy.
Yeah,
exactly.
You were holding it from the top and then having the microphone in your other hand, of course. And it was just so relaxed, and you seemed relaxed. You were relaxed. You were sipping your beer. Perfect. And it was just an energy thing, like we said earlier. Are you visible? Are you not visible on that day? You were so visible. They loved you, and you had just had the perfect energy for the room, and you smashed it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll bring him back again, actually. Christian, you can come back anytime you want.
Blatant thing. I bet you, by the way, at the end of that gig, Paul, somebody came up to you and went, "Yeah, you're really good. You should do this properly,
They did. Of course they did. Never thought about doing stand-up like the other people.
Yeah. You're good enough to be a comedian. Sure.
But of course, before that, they would have said, I normally don't like comedy. But
No, I normally don't like MCs.
right.
Yeah, but you're the best. Do you know what? This is a true story now, and I don't normally MC. I'm not very good at it, but I did once compare the Comedy Store, and there was a very, very well-known person. I'm not going to say who they were, who's now very, very famous, and I was quite new to comparing, and they had a terrible gig, and I couldn't resist. And they weren't very nice, and I just said, "It's not as easy as it looks."
Oh my God!
And do you know what? Sometimes I wake up at night thinking about that because they were looking at me from the box, and they've now went on to be a massive star, and they have got their revenge on me about 3 or 4 times since.
Wow.
It just goes to show you should never be mean, really, as a compere, should you?
No.
You shouldn't.
No.
Or as a person in general.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. Like, have you never back announced anybody in a mean way, Paul?
Yes, I have. I've done it. Yeah. I've made the comment about someone. When I do gig with him, he does remind me, and I still feel bad about it.
There used to be it was a gig in Brighton, and the compere used to come on, and I won't say who it was, and they used to do that thing which was mean as hell. They go, "Got 4 acts on tonight, 3 of them are going to be good, 1's going to be shit. You be the judge." And then,
Oh.
I know, horrible, right? And then of course, all evening, it gets worse as it goes along. All the evening, the audience are thinking, "Is it this one?"
Or even worse, they were thinking, do you think we've seen the shit one already? We're not sure.
That's a good way of looking at it, actually. Yeah. Oh God! Well, yeah, that was.
I think quite a few times as an MC, after an open spot regularly, like I would say, or most frequently, I would then explain to the audience what an open spot is, as a means of telling them that they don't count tonight. Because don't judge the night based on this person who's not getting paid, who's just here to be seen and who didn't have a good gig because they were nervous or whatever, or they've just started out. And then I think that's an elegant way of doing it, of just saying, look, not everybody's getting paid. Some people are showcasing. It's much nicer to say that than to say, yeah, I know that was a bit shit, but let's move on.
I mean, a certain well-known chain of comedy clubs, who shall not be named, but they used to force the compere to say before they brought the tryout spot on that they were trying, which I just think is mean. There's no need for it, because all that, then you've already planted the seed in the audience's mind. Oh, they're going to be nervous, and
Plus, there's a much better way of doing it by just saying the next act is only doing a short spot, and then you just leave it open and people understand it if they are into comedy.
Yeah.
But but always be nice, I mean, as an MC. But then easier said than done, because as an MC, you're kind of like, you're the face of the night, aren't you?
Yeah.
So you're on stage, and they're like, in a way, it's your night, and people are like, if the acts are not good, they think you've booked them.
One last little story before the final question about. I think you were at this gig. It was the booker, who was, I think, emceeing the night. At the end of the night, came up and then said that I think you've heard about one of my comics being a paedophile, which turns out to be a comic that he actually managed. He had his own agency, and the story had come out about one of his comics being a paedophile.
Yeah.
And because it happened that day, he then went up on stage at the end of his own night and said, well, I know you've heard about one of my comics being a paedophile, and I just want you to know that I've dealt with this situation. And everyone was thinking, well, which one of the comics on the night?
We were all sat there at the side of the stage, and the audience, about 300 people, just going, which one? Which one is it?
And was it a kids' show?
I wish it had been, yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah, no, that actually happened, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Future of comedy, what do you think it is?
It's constantly changing, isn't it? The way the stage is not changing. I mean, what you do on stage is not changing. It's just the way people kind of like perceive it when they're not in front of a stage that's changing. Is it more telly, streaming, TikTok, Instagram?
Yeah.
Now it seems to be, it used to be crowd work videos online, and now it's shifting towards like graphics with the jokes on them. And so that will probably always change. And I have no idea where that's headed. But I feel like the stage experience and the offline experience and the analog experience, that's always going to be there. I feel like you go into a room full of strangers, and you're just going to have a blast for 2 hours or however long it takes. And I think that's never going to change. I feel like people are drinking less. That's changing. So that changes, of course, the night as well. But I would say I want to say that however AI is going to knock us out, it's not going to affect the kind of like the enclosed, kind of like encapsulated experience of being in a theater or in a club. And I want to believe that that's always going to be there, and that the crazier the world becomes, the more there's a need for that kind of like fleeting experience. If you don't capture it, turn off your phones. Don't try to kind of like carve it into stone. It's just there. It's fleeting. It's 2 hours, and then you had to be there. You had to be there last week. That's what we want people to say.
What a way to end. Oh, thank you for being on, Chris. It was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Really
lovely
enjoyable.
And chat. Great.
See ya.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. So that was Christian Schulte-Loh.
Very good discussion, that. Very quite philosophical points there about the nature of the audience, etc., wasn't it? Very interesting.
Yeah. Well, and also about persona, what it is and how to project it. Or do you project it? Is it something intangible? Which I think sometimes it is. I think the more you, in a strange sort of way, even though there are also comics who are very mannered and it works for them. Yeah.
Oh, no, but there's no, obviously, having done this podcast now for nearly 3 years, we know there's no final answer to any of those questions, is there really?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that before we even did the podcast.
We'll have to ask that German comic who's got a very similar name to Michael McIntyre.
Oh, Michael was it Mittelmeier? Yeah, it is Mittelmeier.
Michael Mittelmeier. He's got a whole bit about it. Has anybody got a man draw? Anyway,
don't slag off McIntyre.
No, you won't.
He's good. He's good. We love
He's
him.
great. I'm only just yeah.
The only thing I hate about him is he doesn't watch this or listen to this podcast. That's the only thing I've got against him.
Unlike you good people that are looking now. Look.
Yes, looking and listening. You're the ones we care about, even more than Michael McIntyre. We care about you.
Yeah, we do.
And your responsibility is to like, share, tell your friends, send us money. Any other things you can add in? This is your part.
I mean, actually, could you actually get a recording and send it out simultaneously everywhere all over the world at once? Even to people that you don't know, you've never known. Just press send on it, and then just
Yeah, I mean, the other thing you could do is come around my house with a pint of milk, because I need some for me tea, which I'm going to have after this. So if some of you can
I've already got mine.
Yes. So you're all right. I'm not going to ask you to come around with a pint of milk. I want the listeners and the viewers to do it.
Yes. Go get around Paul's house now.
Yeah. Stop being so passive in your, the way you were enjoying this entertainment. Add something to it. Yeah, stop being passive aggressive with your non-likes. With your mouse hovering over the like thing. I don't know. Don't know if I'm going to do it. Do it.
But please do. Yeah. Watch us. So it's
and listen to us. Yeah, we're going to say goodbye now. Or we're going to put more calls to action just at the last minute. We'll say goodbye, but do the things we've asked you to do.
Do them!
They said you should have been here last week. I swear, you should have been here last week.